All right, everyone. So, a lot of people got mad at me for the video that I did on Lebanon being on the verge of civil war. Not because I said that Lebanon is in a perfect atmosphere for a civil war, or at least that atmosphere is accumulating to that point. But people got mad at me because of what I said regarding the Maronite church. I said that the Maronite priesthood, Maronite Catholic priests, and for those of you who don't know, okay, I should add a little bit of a detail on this. The Maronite church is really the main church in Lebanon. It is the Catholic church, or at least the main Catholic church of Lebanon. Of course, you have also the Melkite Catholic Church, but the main Catholic church in Lebanon is the Maronite Church. So, with that said, now that you guys understand it, if you didn't understand that, I said in my last video, and I know it's been a while, I had to take some time off because I had some homework to do. Not homework as in schoolwork, but homework as in actual work on a home. I had to help install tile and hardwood floor, and that is a huge pain in the ass. But now I'm back. So let's get right to this. I said in my last video that Maronite Catholic priests tell their congregants to participate in the Shiite ritual of Ashura. Now, for those of you who don't know, the ritual of Ashura is something that Shiite Muslims do every year in order to commemorate the murder of the sons of Ali. And Ali was the son-in-law of Muhammad. And the name of Ali's sons were Hassan and Hussein. And so to commemorate, to remember the deaths of these two men who they revere heavily, Shiite Muslims will beat themselves with their fists. They will beat their chest very, very intensely. And they will also ritually cut themselves. They will cut their foreheads and they will cut their chests. And it's pretty twisted stuff. I mean, these people go into a frenzy. I have seen videos of Shiites in Iran just beating their chests as if their chests were drums. They beat their chest like it's a drum, like it's an instrument. And you have these imams singing. You have this guy leading the crowd singing, and there's sweat pouring from his face, and he's crying and he's singing. And these guys are beating their chest in this perfect harmony. It's pretty crazy. I must say, it's impressive. The way that they synchronize themselves. I must say, I am impressed, even though I'm not a Shiite Muslim. I'm not a Muslim at all. I am impressed. So anyway, I said that Maronite priests in Lebanon tell their congregants to participate in this ritual. Now, a lot of you guys got mad at me. A lot of Lebanese, a number of Lebanese Catholics put in the comment section objections to what I said, and you guys said things to me like, give me an example of a Maronite priest telling Catholics to do Ashura, to do the ritual cutting and the ritual self-beating. So I see, and the reason why I said this, the reason why I said what I said, was because years ago, I began communication with a Maronite Catholic in Lebanon. Okay, he started communicating with me. He was looking at my work. He liked what we were doing at Shubat.com and on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So I interviewed him, and he ended up connecting me with another Maronite Catholic, and me and these two Catholics in Lebanon began to have an online communication. And one of them told me in one particular conversation that the Maronite priests tell their congregants to go out and participate in Ashura. And I took that to mean that they tell their congregants to go cut themselves. I was wrong about that. I will say it. I was wrong. I was mistaken. I misunderstood what this person told me. Maronite priests don't tell their congregants to go out and cut themselves with knives. But, and this is the hard truth, Maronite Catholics, I should be more specific, Maronite Catholic leaders, Maronite Catholic clergymen tell their congregants to honor the Ashura ritual. They don't go and say, go cut yourselves, but they praise the Ashura ritual. And I have a couple of examples of this. There are numerous examples that you can find online, but you're going to have to look it up in the Arabic language. I couldn't find anything in the English language. I spent hours trying to find this, and I couldn't. So I had to resort to our good friend, Google Translator. So I found a couple of statements. This is one, I believe this is from 2018. It's from the former Maronite Metropolitan of Beirut, Boulos Matar. And this is what he said in a talk in order to commemorate the deaths of Hassan and Hussein for the annual Ashura ritual. He said this, quote, "And how much it is appropriate for us on this anniversary, which you celebrate," and he said this to Shiites, he's speaking to Shiites here, "which you celebrate with all the affection in the hearts, and with all the striving in the minds to find the supreme truths of existence, to look with you to the radiance of the face of Al-Hussein bin Ali," praising Ali, praising Hussein. May Allah be pleased with both of them. And it is he who reached his testimony. And in his martyrdom, and in his martyrdom is one of the loftiest peaks of human history. Nobility, courage, love, and redemption. In fact, he is more than a man. He is saying that Al-Hussein bin Ali, this Shiite saint, is more than a man. So here you have a major Maronite leader praising the person that the Shiites cut themselves for. He is more than a man. Rather, he is a nation within a man, and he is a banner raised for absolute truth in the face of falsehood, bargaining, relativities of positions, and their limitations. Catholic leaders love to speak in these sort of vague ways, these sort of they love to use these vague word salads, just using these, a lot of Asians, limitations and imitations and things like pursuing the obtaining of self-realization within the context of human existence in the etymological context. Catholics love to use these sorts of, they love to use this sort of language because Catholic leaders love to use this sort of language because they can push whatever BS they want to push and then masquerade it in this sort of intellectual mannerism. But here you have a major Maronite leader saying, "Oh, Hassan bin Ali, or Al-Hussein bin Ali, or whoever, oh, he was more than a man." And isn't it interesting that in the Bible it says, "Do not cut yourselves for the dead." And Shiites cut themselves for the dead. And here you have a Maronite leader, not just any leader, but someone who at the time was the Maronite Metropolitan of Beirut, revering this Shiite saint and praising, honoring this ritual of self-mutilation. He also stated, quote, "We Christians look with heart and eye to the martyrdom of Hussein, and we see in it features that point to the death of Christ at the hands of the crucifiers and those behind them. So here he is comparing this person that Shiites cut themselves for to Jesus Christ himself. Okay. I don't have to explain why that's wrong. And then he goes on to say, "O you who look today at the face of Hussein and at the light that surrounds him and the splendor, this great man in history is no longer the property of a group, no matter how great it is. Rather, he belongs to all Muslims, as he is the property of all humanity." And then he goes on to say, "In this particular gloomy atmosphere, we see before us the reflection of clear lights on the face of Imam al-Hussein, and he is mimicking the entire nation and the people of the entire earth in what is related to saving the course of life, whether in the heart of the nation or its surroundings." Here is another example. This is from the Archbishop Nabil al-Hajj, pastor of the Diocese of Tyre for the Maronite Church. And it says here in this article, this is from a Middle Eastern publication, it says here that he spoke and said that Ashura, the ritual of self-mutilation, always transcends its time and place to express the tears of every oppressed yearning for freedom and mercy over time, and it explores the present in the light of the originality of the past in order to face the necessities of life, etc., word salad, blah, blah, blah. So within, and there are numerous examples that you can find online, but you're going to have to search it in the Arabic. Here you have the Maronite leadership telling Catholics, basically sending this message out that we should revere the Ashura ritual. So I was wrong to say that Maronite leaders tell their congregants to participate in the Ashura ritual of self-cutting and self-beating. I was mistaken. I should have prevented myself from making that sort of error. But at the same time, and this cannot be ignored, at the same time, Maronite leaders will show reverence, they will express themselves in reverential terms for this very ritual. This is what I'm telling you guys. The Maronite, and I still stand by what I said, the Maronite priesthood, the Maronite leadership is extremely corrupt. And by the way, the Maronite church will do this whole thing revering Ashura. The Melkite Catholic Church in Lebanon does the same thing. But there's a video showing Melkite Catholics in Lebanon, in a town in Lebanon called Nabatea. And these Lebanese Melkite Catholics are talking about how they observe Ashura. And you even have one Melkite Catholic saying that he used to wipe the blood off of the foreheads of these Shiites after they were done cutting themselves. It's pretty disturbing. Play the clip.
بالزمانيات كنت صيون عصير. لمين؟ إيه للدريبة. كيف كنت تشوف؟ مسح لهم دمهم.
هكذا يستذكر أبو جوزيف ابن 95 عاما كيف كان يساعد أبناء بلدته عند إحيائهم ليالي عاشوراء. لمسيحيين نبطية نظرة خاصة إلى عاشوراء. نشأوا في أجواء إحياء عاشوراء منذ سنوات طويلة حتى باتت تقليدا لدى كثير منهم.
في موسم عاشوراء مش بس أبناء الجنوب بيجوا كتار، ولكن نحن إلنا شعور خاص، هيدا بيتنا والمناسبة عنا نحن منشارك فيها لأنه الحسين لألنا.
نحن أولاد بيتنا وعشناها من صغرنا لعاشوراء وكل سنة يعني بنحفظها وبنجدد معها وبنشارك فيها من يوم ما وعينا لهلا. نحن بيتنا قبل مننا ونحن من بعدهم واولادنا كمان نفس الشيء. بننزل نمشي بالمسيرات.
في سيرة عاشوراء يحكى أن مسيحيا يدعى جون قاتل مع الحسين واستشهد بين يديه، كما يحيي مسيحيو عدد من البلدان العربية هذه الذكرى مشبهين ما جرى بكربلاء بدرب جلجلة السيد المسيح.
هناك من الناحية الروحية هناك تشابه بين الثورة المسيحية وبين الثورة الحسينية، من حيث أن هاتين الثورتين هما اللتان أعطيا المعنى الروحي والإنساني للانتفاضات الثورية المحقة في انتفاضاتها أو ثوراتها على الظلم.
يسوع المسيح أخذ عدل أكثر لأنه خضع لمحاكمة. الإمام الحسين لسوء الحظ لم يحصل على محاكمة.
Here's what I also find amazing, and some of you guys were mad at me because I talked about the fact that the Maronites butchered Palestinians. Now, of course, not all Maronites participated in this. Not saying that. Not saying that. But a lot of Maronite militants, nationalists, whatever you want to call them, a lot of these people were involved in some pretty twisted and evil stuff. And some of you guys were telling me things like, oh, Maronites, they were fighting for Christianity, man. The Phalange, they were fighting for the defense of Christianity. Now, I don't know where you guys got this stuff from. I'm not going to condemn you for that. I'm not going to condemn you for saying these things to me, because I, at one point in time, believed exactly what you wrote to me. I, at one point in time, believed all that stuff, that the Maronites were fighting for Christianity. And I'm ethnically Palestinian. I mean, at least half. My father was from the West Bank, or is from the West Bank. And I knew, for years I've known about the Damour massacre. I remember as a very young kid, my father telling me about the Damour massacre when the Palestinians went into the Maronite town of Damour and butchered hundreds of people, raped the women. Yes, the Palestinians did very twisted things in the Lebanese Civil War. But that does not mean that we all of a sudden look over or justify or exempt the Maronites and what they did and and the atrocities that they committed. Yes, the Palestinians did the Damour massacre. Yes, it was done by the PLO. But at the same time, the Damour massacre happened after the Karantina Massacre. And very few people talk about the Karantina Massacre, in which around 1,500 Palestinians were butchered by the Kataib, by the Lebanese Maronite fascists. And many Palestinians were forced into dehydration because in the area of Karantina, the Kataib, the Phalangists, did not allow water to be transported into this Palestinian area. And so many Palestinians thirsted to death. They died from thirst. It was absolutely horrific. And that happened before the Damour massacre. So if we're going to talk about, if we're going to say things like, the PLO did Damour. Well, yeah, but the Kataib did Karantina. But if we're just going to sit here and go back and forth with, they did this and they did that, then we're not going to settle anything. We have to acknowledge and recognize when evil is done, regardless of which side committed the evil. But here's the thing. All these people who were upset with me saying, the Maronites were the Maronites or the Kataib or the Phalangists, they were defending Christianity. Answer me this question. Answer me this simple question. When the Kataib went into Sabra and Shatila and butchered civilians, innocent people, what did rape have to do with Christianity? Like, I can understand fighting for your faith. I can understand Christians defending their villages from terrorists. I can understand that. I can understand peasants, villagers defending their homes from evil narco cartel cult murderers. I did a whole documentary on that subject. But when the Phalangists murdered Palestinians in Sabra and Shatila, they raped. When Robert Fisk went to the camps where these Palestinians were murdered, he talked about how he saw a dead Palestinian woman with her legs wide open and blood dripping down her leg. there was some seriously sick and twisted stuff taking place. I read about phalangists collecting body parts from Palestinians that they murdered. What the hell has any of that stuff to do with defending Christianity? That's a sincere question, and I want a sincere answer to that. And that leads me back to the original subject of this video. Because some of you guys were telling me, well, the Maronites, they were defending Christianity. Then why does the Maronite church revere the Ashura ritual? If it was all about defending Christianity against Islam, then why did Maronite Catholic fighters ally with Shiite militants during the Lebanese Civil War? And why today do Lebanese Catholics express reverence for the Ashura Shiite Islamic ritual? Why? Why? Because it wasn't about defending Christianity. That's the lie that you guys have bought into. And I'm not blaming you guys, because I bought into it myself years ago. I'm trying to help you guys. It had nothing to do with Christianity. Lebanese nationalism, in particular, Lebanese Catholic nationalism, Phalangist Kataib nationalism, has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with Christianity. Nothing. Read the ideology of the Kataib. Read about the ideology of the Kataib. Sure, you'll probably find some reference to the Christian faith. You're not going to find no verses from Jesus in their ideology. You're not going to find turn the other cheek. What you're going to find is a bunch of rhetoric about the Phoenician race and the importance of the Phoenician race. And you're going to have a bunch of psychopaths defending that sort of stuff. What the hell does that have to do with Christianity? And there was another guy who was fighting for the Maronite cause in the Lebanese Civil War. His name was Danny Hamoun. And the Hamoun movement wasn't really the same as the Kataib, but nonetheless it was paralleled within that whole Maronite nationalist ideological strata. And I remember seeing this video of Danny Hamoun being interviewed regarding atrocities committed by these Maronite fascists. And the interviewer brings up how civilians were murdered. And Danny Hamoun says, these areas were all slums, and now they're being cleared out for property development. It's about property development.
It was a shanty town in which 13,000 poor Muslims lived in squalor, surrounded by Christians who despised them, not for being Muslim, but because they were poor. 3 months ago, the Christian militia invaded the slum. It was a massacre. One of those who led the invasion was Danny Hamoun. Was it not a ruthless operation?
No, it wasn't ruthless. They were just asked to give up their arms and go out of here peacefully. They didn't. A very concise military action was taken, and they were given free access and transportation out of here. What made it seem ruthless? Because we cleared the shanties out of here. This is private property, and it can be used now for development. We're desperately short of land, and I'm sure the people will use it for proper development.
There was no mention of Christianity. There's no mention of, well, we're fighting for the faith. There was nobody raising up a crucifix here. I remember years ago, back in, I think it was in 2015, I remember years ago going to this Maronite youth event. And I thought it would be something cool to go to, right? I was in my 20s at the time. I was going to this Maronite Catholic church for a number of months already, for about, I want to say maybe 5 months or so. And I thought, okay, let's meet some young Catholics. And this is a desire that a lot of Catholic people have. They want to see young Catholics. Some of you guys have wrote to me about this, how you want to see more young people, how you want to meet young people who have the same religious interests as you. And I shared that interest at the time. I still do, but I'm not as optimistic as I used to be. So I went to the event, and there I meet the Archbishop for a cluster of different, the Archbishop of the Maronite Church for a number of different states, Texas, Ohio, etc. His name was Abdullah Elias. And I remember Abdullah Elias sitting next to me, and we started talking. And then some other priests sat next to us. They were all Lebanese, of course. And one of them asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from California." And then the guy says to me, "No, where are you really from?" What? Oh my goodness gracious. It was racism. And I said, "Well, my father is from Israel. My father was born in Israel." And he said, "Oh, which part of Israel?" And I said, "The West Bank." They didn't like that. I could see it in their faces that they didn't like that. You can see it in the body language that they just didn't like that. And then I remember we had a Q&A session with the bishop, and I asked Abdullah Elias, I said, "What are we going to do about Vatican II? Because Vatican II praises Islam. What are we going to do about that? Because that's a heresy." And Abdullah Elias said, "Well, we have a respect for Islam because unlike other religions like Hinduism, Islam has one God." And I remember also bringing up, and this was at the time when ISIS was the headline all over the world. And I remember I brought up the fact that they were Christian militias in Syria who were defending their villages from Islamic terrorists. And I said, "What do you think about all of the Christians in Syria who are defending themselves from these terrorists?" And I could hear all the little chit-chat murmurings in the room. There were people talking smack about me, even though I couldn't really understand what they were saying. I mean, they weren't necessarily talking smack about me personally, but they didn't really like my questions. And this one Lebanese guy next to me with glasses, he says, "I never heard about that." And I'm just like, well, you're not informed, obviously. But I think Abdullah Elias, I think he just sort of waved off the question. I don't remember. I don't think he said anything of, at least he didn't say anything of substance. So then I remember after the Q&A, this other Lebanese priest walks up to me. I didn't know what his name was, but I do know that he was from Lebanon and that he flew in from LA. All the Lebanese, Middle Eastern people, when they come to America, they usually go to either two states. They either go to California or they go to Michigan. So this priest comes up to me and he says, Muslims worship the same God. They worship the same God. Islam has one God, man, one God. And I said, "How could you say that when Islam is a Unitarian religion that rejects the Trinity?" I said, "Islam is an Arian heresy." And he goes, "Arian, what's that?" And I said, Arianism. I said, it's a 4th century heresy. It was condemned by the Council of Nicaea. And he says to me, his exact words, this is what this guy told me. He said, "I fell asleep in church history class." That's what this guy told me. So the Maronite Church is, for one thing, it's filled with nationalism, because at the beginning of this meeting, some Lebanese guy got up and said, "We must remember our Lebanese identity." And I'm sitting there like the only black guy in the middle of a Klan meeting. Like, I don't belong here. "We must remember our Lebanese identity." And I came to the wrong meeting. So the Lebanese Catholic Church, the Lebanese Maronite Church, it's filled with nationalism. You guys praise this nationalism. You think this is great. But it has nothing to do with defending Christianity, because these very people will praise Islam. These very people will make alliances with the Shiites. These very people will revere the ritual of self-mutilation that is Ashura, the Shiite ritual. And you guys want me to believe that the Maronite nationalists are here to defend Christianity? It has nothing to do with defending Christianity. It does have something to do with identitarianism, because that's what this is. When you hear someone in a church saying, we must remember our Lebanese identity, and they have the focus on the ethnic identity, then at that point, that church is not about Catholicism. It's not even about Christianity, because Christianity, by its very nature, is universal. And I'll rephrase that with just one different word. The very essence of Christianity is Catholic. Christianity is supposed to be Catholic. And by that, I mean Christianity is supposed to be universal, because the word Catholic means universal. When you say the Catholic Church, you are literally saying the universal church. And all these doofuses walking around talking about Catholic nationalism, they're doofuses. They're literally walking contradictions. And if any of you Catholics out there want to debate me on this, let me know. Send me a message. My inbox is open on Facebook. Look up my public page, Theodore Ted Schubot. Let me know if you want to debate me on this. Because what you guys are believing and what you guys are touting is bullcrap. The word Catholic is universal. Therefore, Catholicism and nationalism are at odds with each other. A lot of you guys like to talk about how Catholicism and Islam are at odds with each other. Catholicism and communism are at odds with each other. But none of you guys will ever say Catholicism and identitarianism or ethno-nationalism are at odds with each other. You will never say ethno-nationalism is the antithesis of what Catholicism is. It has nothing to do with fighting Islam. It has everything to do with being against Palestinians or being against Syrians, because Lebanese people, a lot of them, hate Syrians. It's the truth, especially Maronites. It has nothing to do with fighting Islam. Nothing. Anyway, hope that covers that whole thing. I will be back doing videos daily. At least I'm going to try my best to do it. I was gone for a while, and now I'm back. So here we are. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.